Hi, welcome back to another episode of Nobody's Doing It Right. My name is Kat. For today's episode, we're going to talk about whether you actually want that person or if you just want them to disprove every negative narrative you have about yourself. And I made a video about this on TikTok and posted it on Instagram. Surprisingly doing better on Instagram than TikTok. Sometimes they do better on TikTok than Instagram. It really depends on the audience, but clearly it was one that hit home for a lot of people and sent some of my viewers into a spiral of existential confusion and dread when it comes to relationships. And this can apply to romantic relationships and platonic relationships, any kind of relationship really. But the question I ask is, do you actually want them, or do you just want them to disprove every negative narrative you have about yourself? And the initial responses I got to that were, yeah, like the second one, of course. What's wrong with that? Like, what's the issue with that? And it is really important to be mindful of, if the person you're after, you're chasing, or you're seeing, or you're wanting to be with, romantically or platonically, if the only drive or desire for them is to have every negative narrative about you that you have about yourself to be disproven by the mere fact that their presence is in your life, that they have chosen to be in your life, that somehow disproves the negative beliefs you have about yourself. That is, in my opinion, of course, and through my own experience as well, not a healthy way to approach relationships, because it does not allow you to cultivate that relationship with yourself. You are outsourcing that self-worth and putting it in the hands of somebody else. And it's not their responsibility to do that. It's actually kind of disrespectful to do that to them, to burden them with that. Because also, if you are in a relationship with somebody and they do disprove those narratives for you simply by being in your life, maybe they're great, maybe you really like them, they have all these qualities that you really admire. So for them to choose you means that you're not, awful, incapable, stupid, not attractive, whatever narratives you have in your mind, right? For them to choose you, then that means that you must not be any of those things. So it feels good initially, but say that person does something different than what you want them to do. They act in ways that are not in accordance to that fantasy you have in your mind of how they should behave to make sure that you feel valid. Then all of a sudden, you're back to square one. You're back to feeling invalid. You're back to believing those narratives in your mind, because they're not acting in accordance with what you expect them to act like in order to make you feel like you're not all these awful things. And that then hinges our self-worth. It hinges our, feelings about ourselves, our relationship to ourselves on this other person. They have the power now. They have all the control. And some people might use that negatively, right? Some people might use that in a malicious way and use it to manipulate you. And some people might not want that power at all, because it isn't something that you should want. Nobody should want that power in a healthy relationship. They should want the ability to make you feel good, of course. There's nothing wrong with wanting someone to make you feel desired, wanted, appreciated, of course. But when they have that complete and total power in their hands, it is a burden. It is a responsibility now, and it can be overwhelming to have that power in your hands. I say this as somebody who has experienced it from other people and who has probably put that on other people as well. I can kind of see it from both perspectives. And in the moments when I've experienced it from somebody else, it puts too much power in your hands and you feel like you can't handle this, because it's not something that you, a mere mortal human being, should have the power to do for someone else. And I think a lot of that ties back to our relationship with our parents or caretakers growing up. If we never had the ability to feel good enough based, in the way we were conditioned to believe or think about ourselves, maybe we saw them thinking these narratives and negative beliefs about themselves, so we kind of internalize that, watching them do it to themselves. We now are looking for that parental figure. We're looking for that example in somebody else, someone who is ostensibly an equal to us, right? This other adult person. And they don't have that power. They don't have that ability to do that for us. They can't be our parental figures. We're adults now. And that's actually really sad. There's a lot of grief involved to recognizing and acknowledging this, that you might have not had that example in your life growing up. Now you have to be that example for yourself. Nobody else can do that for you. And part of this is also accepting that you have to step out of your childness. You have to take your child self out of the driver's seat of your car. You have to now take the wheel. And that can be really difficult. It can be very painful. You have to let go of that. It feels like you have to let go of your past self. You don't really have to let go of them completely. You don't have to abandon them. It can feel like an abandonment though, emotionally, when you think about it, but it's not. You're letting them take a break. You're letting them take a seat in the back of the car to relax because you now are the one that can control the wheel. You're the one driving. And that's how it should be. And that is, I think, and I'm using this, analogy just to express the relationship that we should have with ourselves. We should feel like we can trust ourselves. We should feel like we are kind to ourselves, loving to ourselves, caring, compassionate, forgiving, so that we don't have those negative narratives that we then need disproven by somebody else. We should be the ones that disprove those negative narratives to ourselves. And that starts with being kind to ourselves, being nice, doing all the things that we would want this other person to do to make us feel like, these negative narratives are not true. What does that look like for you? What would that mean for you to be the kind of person that makes you feel that way? What would you say to yourself now? What would you actually believe about yourself? It can be helpful to pull examples throughout your life of things that are positive and focus more attention on those, right? The things we focus our attention on is what we then cultivate, even subconsciously. We start cultivating the things that we put all our attention on because our mind believes that, oh, well, if we're focusing on this, then it must be true. It must be something that we want to focus on more. Start pulling up positive examples. And this is uncomfortable. It's going to be very difficult if you haven't been shown how to do this. You haven't been conditioned to do this. It'll feel like you're going against everything you know to do, your nature. And that's the point. It should feel uncomfortable initially because it's not normal for you to feel this way, to feel kind towards yourself, to feel loving towards yourself. The more you sit in that discomfort and you push yourself through it, the more resilience you establish within yourself, and the more you're able then to continue the new pattern, the new way of seeing yourself, the new narratives and beliefs you have about yourself. But that person should not, whoever that is, whether it's a friend, romantic partner, whatever, should not be responsible for that. They should not have that much power. They should not have that much responsibility. And it's not fair to them if you are only seeking out a relationship with them or a friendship with them because you need this done for you. That's not fair to them. And it's not fair to you. It's not fair to anybody, really. This isn't to shame you or guilt you if you do this. I think a lot of us do, and we don't even realize it sometimes. And sometimes we do realize it, and it's hard to break out of these patterns. So again, this isn't to shame you. It's just to bring more awareness to it. It's just to give you a perspective that helps you maybe shift so that you don't feel bad in your own head, right? You don't feel bad in the narratives and beliefs and mindset you have, to help you work through that so you can actually start cultivating relationships with people that are authentic and genuine and aligned with your self-worth. They're based on the foundation of your self-worth, not the foundation of your self-hatred. That's, I think, how you establish healthy relationships, healthy dynamics with people. So if you notice yourself wanting somebody because you think that they are this idealized person in your mind, that they are amazing, they're perfect, they're everything that you wish you could be. So to have them choose you, to have them be in your life, their mere presence would disprove every negative narrative you have about yourself. Really ask yourself how you can start disproving those negative narratives for you. Because then you don't need the other person. You don't need them to facilitate this self-love for you. You want them in your life. And then you have more clarity to recognize if they're actually aligned with the values and morals and whatever else you actually want, not just because they are able to make you feel like you aren't awful as a person. When we're in that headspace, when it's coming from a place of desperation or scarcity or fear or self-hatred, we're not able to see clearly if this person's actually aligned with us, if they have all the qualities and characteristics we actually want in a person. Our perspective, our vision is clouded by that self-hatred, by that need, that desperation to be valid, to feel valid through someone else's eyes. And of course, humans, we're communal creatures. We need each other in the sense that it's important for us to have community. So I'm not saying you don't need anybody and you shouldn't want to need anyone. Of course, that's not what I'm talking about. I mean the need with regards to needing your self-love, your self-kindness towards yourself facilitated through someone else. When you need that, I think it skews the way you see people. And of course, the way you see yourself. But then that creates this really faulty foundation to these relationships. And then maybe you end up with this person for a couple of years, but it's not really rooted in anything substantial. It's rooted in needing them to prove to you that you are good enough all the time, no matter what. Even if they act, like a flawed, fallible human, and they do things sometimes that don't prove or don't disprove those negative narratives about yourself. That's not fair to them, because then you are holding them to the standard of like a god, this godlike figure, and they're not that. And it's not fair to them to not be able to also be in their messy humanness and their own feelings of, maybe not feeling good enough at times. And again, this isn't to shame you for it. It's just to give you the perspective of, what if you were put in that position, right? What if someone was putting that pressure on you? It wouldn't feel good. And it shouldn't feel good. It shouldn't be something that you want to take on, that responsibility, because it is more of a parental responsibility. And I don't think that is a healthy way to approach relationships in general as adults. But I think a lot of the time, because of our own trauma or wounding from childhood, we carry that child version of ourselves with us a lot. And they are, again, like I said, in the driver's seat when they shouldn't be. They can be with us on our journey, of course, but they shouldn't be driving our car. We have to let them sit in the back seat and just hang out and not have that responsibility or that fear all the time, that panic to be made to feel like they are good enough. It's like, you can make that child version of yourself feel good enough. It takes work. It doesn't happen overnight. It's easier said than done. It's a process that I'm still working through myself. Like, I still catch myself experiencing certain aspects of this kind of, self-worth issue. But it can happen, and it just takes time, and it just takes awareness. So I hope this gave you a different perspective. I hope it helped. If you want to talk with me one-to-one about these topics, feel free to book a call on my website. You can follow me on my other social media accounts. And you can also subscribe to my Substack, which is my newsletter, where I write about topics like this as well. Other than that, thank you for listening, and I'll be back again soon with another episode.